and welcome back to Broken and Brilliant. I'm Carrie O'Toole and Melinda Cadwallader. Welcome back.
Thank you.
We have a really special guest here today, and I am so excited to welcome Danny Oertli.
Hey.
Danny is a local, which is amazing, Parker, Colorado.
Parker, Colorado. Here we are. It took me 10 minutes to get here from my house.
Isn't that cool? I just
Awesome.
think you don't have to go to a
And I was
studio.
still late. The closer I am to home, the later I am usually.
goes.
I can go across country and be right on time.
Well, the plane, it gets you.
Yeah, there you go. Maybe that's it. You just put it together for me.
If you miss the plane, then you're out of luck. But Danny is a local singer-songwriter, and we just found out he has played in all but 2 states.
All but 2 states. That just means I've been doing it for a long time and a lot of miles. But North and South Dakota is all I have left.
Well, so if you're in North or South Dakota,
Give me a call. Yeah.
awesome.
Yeah.
Well, Danny, our podcast is called Broken and Brilliant, and we like to bring in people who, a lot of times when somebody is successful in life, you kind of look at them and think, well, maybe life's kind of been easy for this person.
Yeah.
They're just really gifted or have that little bubble around them or whatever. And we're finding that's really not the case.
Yeah.
Most people who have made it anywhere, they've been through a lot to get there.
Yeah.
And I know that's true with you.
Oh my goodness. Yeah. There's just a lot of miles on the road and experience, and God teaches you in the midst of all of that and shapes you. And I think if you would have told me when I was in junior high, just picking up guitar early into high school, hey, you're going to be doing music for a living and travel and play, and people are actually going to listen to you play and write a song.
And pay you.
Shocking, I think I would have laughed, and I never would have imagined the detours that the road takes, because you kind of see the goal and you think, okay, that's where I'm headed, that's where I'll be when I'm 60 years old, and you have no idea the roads that go up and sideways and down and detours and where God's going to take you.
Right.
And,
now, were you always interested in music? Was that something that you always wanted to do?
what? Came from a very musical family. My dad grew up playing trumpet, and he was all-state whatever in Montana playing trumpet. And my grandpa was a sax player, played with the Glenn Miller Band once even.
Wow.
So he was a professional sax player that would go all around Montana.
So now,
play.
did you know that I was an all-state tuba player?
Wow, I did not know
I
that.
majored in music ed, and my instrument was tuba, and my daughter is right now at DU majoring on French horn.
Get out of here.
Yeah.
Wow.
Taught band
So
for
great.
9 years.
That's fantastic.
Yeah.
So I grew up with music all around me and just kind of got into it early. And it was one day I was in 8th grade, and my dad and I were at the flea market in Colorado Springs.
Yes.
Yeah.
I love that flea market.
Yeah, flea market. And there was an amp and a guitar. I think it was $12 for the amp and a guitar. It had 2 strings on it. And my dad just took a flyer and got it for me, and I taped it up to look like Eddie Van Halen's guitar from the 80s, and I started playing U2 and Van Halen songs on 2 strings.
Wow.
And that's kind of how I started.
It's really talented to be able to do it on 2 strings.
The others had 4 more, and it just confuses me. But it was just kind of this thing that I didn't have any aspirations to be a musician. I just liked music, and it
Right.
kind of came easy to me, and I'd try to hear something and then play it. And but I never thought, I never had this goal. I wanted to be in sports medicine until I realized I just like the sports and not the medicine part for the. So
I just want to play.
So yeah. So
Cool.
that's
Cool. Well, then you grew up, obviously, because here you are, and you want to
That's
share a story.
debatable,
Well,
the whole grow up part.
let's say that physically you
Yeah,
you grew up.
I'm still wearing Vans that I wore, in 7th grade. So yeah. I'm
Well,
sorry.
you've got a young spirit, which
Yeah.
is awesome,
Yeah.
and you've got kids too. So
That's true. That'll keep you young.
got to play with them a little there. But what story do you have that you would like to share with us about just a difficult time that you've been through in your life? I know of one that I'm thinking, but let's see where this
Sure.
goes. You can share whatever you'd like.
I married my high school sweetheart, and
How old were you when you got married?
that's a great question. 21, 22,
Wow.
somewhere in there.
Okay.
And we'd known each other since we were 15.
Wow.
And got married. We were at Colorado State University. She was studying medicine, was about ready to go to medical school. I was getting through my last year of school, and I just kind of started into music.
Uh-huh.
And we got married, and it seemed as if our whole life was ahead of us. She was going to be a doctor. I was going to be a musician. She could pay for my musician habit when she was looking at a real job. That's where we thought we were going.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And 6 months into marriage, we found out that she had cancer.
Mm.
And we were young and broke and scared. And moved to Philadelphia, where her dad worked in a hospital at that time. And she began chemotherapy and lost her hair and was sick and stayed in the bed most of the day. And here we are, 22 years old. Brand new married. And I had no idea what God's plans were for us. So she went through 8 months of chemo, 6 weeks of radiation. And after all that, they said, well, it looks like the cancer's gone, but very unlikely you'll ever be able to have biological kids. It's just with all the treatment that her body had had. We started looking into adoption when we found out that she was pregnant. It was this big shock. Cancer looks like it's been gone for a while, no kids, and then little Gracie comes along.
Oh my goodness.
She's going for her driver's license today. She's 16. So, and then a couple more years went by, and they told us definitively, barring another miracle, no more biological kids. And we'd always wanted to adopt. So signed up with a local agency, and a girl picked us out of a book because she liked that I did music for a living. And we were able to adopt Jack, and Jack is 13.
Wow. Okay.
So that's kind of the first half of the journey.
Right.
I love that, you hear these diagnoses, and then you hear what potentially could happen in the future, and then you're clouded with this fear of the what ifs. And my daughter's 14. She's a cancer survivor, 3 years cancer survivor. And that was one thing that they told us, that she may never be able to have children, just so you know. Yeah. And we've had people like you with the same stories of like, I don't claim that. I don't claim that over her. And you can tell me that, that's great. You need to,
and
officially.
It may be reality.
It may be, but I'm not going to hope in that and, plan for that, because the truth is the Lord can do anything. And
you don't
when it's
know.
His will, that it's,
And I think, doctors go from one patient to the next, and I'm so thankful for their expertise and their knowledge. But I think sometimes they can say things and be kind of thinking out loud, not knowing that giant brick just landed in your brain.
Yeah.
Well, it might be possible that they won't have children, this or that, and it just resonates for the rest of your life.
Mm-hmm. And it's just a sentence.
Yeah.
And not just, just so you know, that just saying what you just did, that has brought freedom. I know, to me, a parent of a child who's been through cancer, and any other survivor who maybe was told that, like, you're living proof that those conclusions aren't conclusive.
Absolutely. Absolutely. God can do whatever He wants, whenever He wants.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And our job is just to trust and live and be thankful.
Right.
Yeah.
But your story continued, because...
So, young family. Gracie's 4 years old. Jack is 1 year old, just learning to walk. It was February of 2002, and Cindy wasn't feeling good. Cancer was still years in her past. But every now and then things would come up, and they would try to figure out what's going on. She had a hard time breathing that day, wasn't feeling good. Went to the doctor, and while she was signing in at the doctor's office, collapsed and had a massive heart attack, and went to be with the Lord. And maybe a family history of heart disease, combined with all the treatment she'd had so close to her heart. And so on that cold February day, I found myself single dad with 2 little kids. And I remember not far from here, miles from here, just down the road, sitting in my house, everything had just happened a couple hours before, and looking out the window, thinking, what am I going to do?
Well, your
Everything
life
is turned upside down.
Yeah, I was just going to say, your entire life just got yanked out from under you.
Yeah.
And you're mid-20s at this point?
Yep.
Because you're still not even not even 30.
I think I was probably maybe late 20s or something like that. And,
wow.
So thankfully I have a lot of family in town that helped me with the kids and loved us. But, grief is like a weight. You wake up each day, and it's hard to physically just get out of bed.
Right.
And you kind of make it through the day, and you find hope in different things. And at night, you're like, okay, I can do this. And you open your eyes the next morning, and
there you are
we
again.
go again.
Here I am again.
Yeah.
Do you know that just that moment, like right before you are fully alert and you don't really remember?
Yeah.
And it feels like life is okay.
Yeah.
And then all of a sudden, it's like you just don't want to open your eyes because the weight hits again. It's kind of there's a weightless moment just before the world hits again.
This is a little bit of a sidetrack into creative musician world, but that little twilight, that I call it kind of the magic time.
Yeah.
That is when the best ideas come. when you're kind of half conscious and you don't
Absolutely.
let your brain shut everything down.
Your fears don't invade,
Right.
and reality doesn't hit.
Yeah, and I don't know how to do it. You could be a millionaire if you could figure it out. But a lot of times when I'm just waking up, I'll try to remember these ideas and write them down as fast as I can and remember them.
Yes.
Yeah.
That's where my blogs come from a lot of times.
Yes.
I can't force myself to write, and all of a sudden in the morning I get one of those and it just flows and it just comes right out. There's almost no editing. It's just like, cool, thanks God.
Yeah, the magic time. All too quickly gone.
But then the weight kind of hits again, and life was, I can't even imagine trying to be a single parent at that age when you have just experienced such a tragedy and such a grief and a loss, because you've still got the pressures and the reality of day-to-day life. Yeah. And you've got these little kids who are also grieving at their own little age.
Well, I think that was the hardest thing is the kids and trying to process the grief with them. You know, when you want to cry. When they want to cry. But at the same time, providing strength and confidence. It's this weird tightrope. And and sometimes you get it right and sometimes you don't. And maybe there isn't even a right when you're going through that stuff, just honesty and sincerity.
Right.
But the kids made it the most difficult. Just trying to survive with two little kids. And I remember I'd show up, and I still had to make a living, so I'd show up and I'd do music, and I'd have my guitar in one hand and box of CDs in the other, and these two little kids behind me, and I have to go check them in at some Sunday school that I don't know about, and then set up my table and grab them. And emotionally, there's a weight to be carried. Physically, it's exhausting. And so I just, if single parents are listening out there, you're not alone. It's hard.
Yeah.
It's hard. And
going through grief is hard when you're not dealing with all of that too. Yeah. When the pressure is not there to be the sole breadwinner, and you don't have children to take care of. Grief is hard enough anyway, but add those burdens in too, and it's just, it can almost feel unbearable sometimes.
Yeah, it just looks like a mountain that's insurmountable.
How long did that last?
Oh, wow. Everybody grieves differently. And that's one thing I've learned. And there's people who are internal processors and external processors. I'm an absolute extrovert. So,
Hey, woo!
Yeah. So I had to just chatty about everything. And I had a good friend, Craig, who lived close in town. And we played ping pong a lot of nights. And just, and he was kind of quiet, but he'd just listen to me talk. Other people just want to mow their own lawn and take care of things on their own and kind of process on their own. But it's a different stage for everybody. And especially for anybody grieving that first year, all those first birthday, first Easter, first Christmas, all those milestones are hard to get over. But I read something that was significant to me. One of the greatest books ever written on grief is by C.S. Lewis, called A Grief Observed, and it's very short. It's like 80 pages or something. And in the book, he talks about processing through this grief, but then there's this line, it's just this one line, and he says, at a certain point, I can't remember if it was a year, I don't remember what he said, but I shall not pass this way again. And when I read that, something resonated with me. And I thought, at the year mark, I am going to try and, to the best of my ability, move on, because you can get stuck in that for a long time.
And I know people, I do life coaching, and I know people who get stuck in that, and it almost, it becomes their identity.
Sure. I
am a grief survivor, but they're not really surviving, because every day their whole life is about the grief and the loss. And it's like, when does new life start happening? And I do think that you can get stuck in that. I mean, it's not to say just put it away, pretend that it's not there, because I'm sure you still deal with it here and there.
Yeah, it's different. The pains that are sharp and knife-like in those early months of grief almost become this kind of fond memory over time. And I remember people would tell me that, like, one day it won't be this sharp pain. And when you're in the midst of it, you don't want to think that. You want, no, I want to always have it be fresh, and it'll mean this person didn't mean as much to me if it starts to dull.
Sure. I didn't love them, or they didn't really matter. They weren't here. They don't have a legacy or something. If I don't hold on to that pain,
then they disappear. Right. Yeah, and that's just it's just not true.
Right.
So,
because really, if you think back, what would she want for you? would she want your life to be all about mourning her the rest of your life?
Right.
And for her children to be stuck in this grief forever?
Not.
No, she'd want them to move on. And I think the same thing. I had a miscarriage, and I just, for me, it was very painful for a few short months.
Yeah.
And I still think about it once in a while, but I don't dwell on that. I mean, it's a difficult time. I remember it. I can relate to other people who have gone through that type of loss. And then we relinquished our child, which was very, very difficult. Yeah. And a lot of people don't understand that one, but it feels like a death to me.
Right.
Sure.
And for I think it was about 2 years for me that one took. It was a pretty serious one. Yeah. But we have to move on. I mean, you can't just stay stuck in that. And that's the thing that I would say is, if you do find it's several years later and you just can't seem to get through that, that's when I'd say seek somebody out and get some help. Yeah.
And that's, I think, the part that's hard to decipher, too, because everyone grieves their own way. And there's grief of loss of life, but then there's grieving of a loss of a dream and a loss of a career, or the different losses. And because we grieve differently, who's to say when is too long and when's not long enough? Right. You know, like that's such a hard...
Yeah, because I think sometimes somebody dies and all of a sudden within a month, they're kind of out there acting as if nothing happened. Yeah. And it's like, okay, well, is that just denial? Is there something, or did you really,
or is that maturity?
Or is it maturity? I don't know.
Yeah. It's such a complicated, complex issue.
Right.
And that's why if there's people in your life that are grieving, you just love them. You just do your best to love them. Right. Anyway, if that means taking out their trash, take out their trash. That means watching their kids, watch our kids. Yeah. It's a process that is up and down and sideways. And it can be ugly, it can be beautiful. Just love them.
What are some of the things that people did for you, or that expressed to you, that meant the most during your time?
It's interesting. When a tragedy happens, and for me it was a young wife and 2 little kids, and so it was this big dramatic thing. And I'd go to the mall, and I'd be walking down, and people would see me, and I'd kind of know them, not really, and they'd kind of dart into the store. They didn't know what to say. Right. And so a lot of times people will avoid you because they don't want to say the wrong thing and offend you. Yep. So one of the things I would encourage people to do is just talk to the person. You don't have to be perfect. You don't have to be perfect. Just it exacerbates and alienates the person when people don't talk to them.
And you're already feeling lonely.
Yeah.
You've just lost half of yourself, basically, and now you're being avoided.
And a lot of people told me, hey, I really wanted to call you. I just didn't know what to say. I wanted to write you an email. Yeah. And that's fine. I get it.
Right.
But if you can, engage that person. Yeah. I think we mentioned it earlier. I think it's really important to find out if people are internal or external processors. Because if they're external, take them out for coffee and ask them some questions. What was your favorite memory of this person? Sure. What was their favorite color? What is hard? What is good?
Is this a good day? Is this a hard day?
Yeah, let them run. Let them talk.
So you're saying that it is okay for people to ask about
Absolutely.
her. I think that's hard for people. They don't know if you're ready for that. And that's an uncomfortable, maybe I'll just go make them some soup or something like that, but that it is okay.
Well, and I think it's important understanding if they're an extrovert, because with that type of person, they have to talk. I know for me, if I don't say it out loud, it just sits in my head and doesn't go anywhere and rumbles around, and I'm going crazy inside. But the minute I start talking, I can think and I can make decisions
thoughts in order.
Yes.
And my go-to question is, what is your favorite memory? And they might have a 300, but all of a sudden they'll come back to 1 or 2, and it will bring that light to their eyes, and they'll be like, oh yeah, that was good. I remember that, because they've been thinking about the difficult.
Right.
So that's a great question to ask people. Now, if they're an introvert and they're an introvert, just do something where they can be an introvert. Like, hey, can I take your kids to the movies tonight, and you just hang out at home? Right. It's just important to understand who the person is and do your best to love them.
That's really good advice.
That's good.
That's really good.
Yeah.
Well, I know that your story didn't stop there.
Yes, by God's grace. So, single dad for a couple of years, struggling through feeding him cheese tortillas 3 meals a day.
Those are so easy.
Yum, yum.
I love that.
I know.
Wait a minute, what's wrong with that?
add an apple once in a while and you're good.
Oh, man. A lady from our church came to bring food. And little Gracie, I don't know, 5 years old or something. She goes, would you like some fruit? And Gracie said, what's fruit? And I thought, that's a perfect encapsulation
Father of the year.
Yes. And another day, I remember I took her to kindergarten. And the teacher kind of put her hands on her shoulders. She goes, oh, Grace, your hair's very special. And I looked, and it was just a wild rat's nest. And as a man, it didn't even occur to me to brush her hair that day. Like, I found socks that looked close and a shirt. You know, I thought she was good to go. It never occurred to me, oh, yeah, brush her hair. So, yeah, those are, yeah. Anyways.
Well, single dad stories, those are
oh man, yeah, there's so many.
You and I would not think about, just kind of funny, so good.
So I was single dad for a couple of years, struggling along, and I went out to Washington, D.C. to do some music, and there was a booth for Compassion International in the Washington, D.C. Convention Center. Compassion's great ministry. I know a lot of people that work for them, and out from behind the booth comes this beautiful dark-haired girl from California, first day on the job, and I tell people that I remember thinking, you know, they have all the packets on the table, all these kids you could sponsor us. In my head, I'm thinking, forget the kids. I want to sponsor her. You know? And,
do you have a little card for this one?
Yeah, seriously. Where do I sign up?
I'd like to take her picture home.
Yeah. But Raina had moved from California to work out here and went from Focus on the Family to Compassion. And we met and found out that we lived 45 minutes apart. And so in D.C., I was there for 4 days. And really, Cindy, my first wife, was the only girlfriend I'd ever had. I'd never really asked anybody out. All this time had gone by. And so I'm looking in the mirror in Washington, D.C. thinking, what am I doing? I think I like this girl, but I don't know how to ask her out. I don't want to freak her out. I don't, want a mistake if she's crazy.
Dating thing.
I didn't know.
Yeah.
And I honestly remember praying, God, I'd rather be hit by a bus than do this poorly. And that was my prayer. I'd rather be hit by a bus.
Just strike me down right now if I'm going to bomb this thing.
Yeah, because I don't know what I'm doing. And, early on, we started dating, and I probably freaked her out because I was very forward, and I took her out to eat that first night, and I said, I really like you. I've got 2 kids. I've got this, blah, blah, blah. But I just want to be serious and pursue you, and I don't know if she liked the honesty or if she's
thing
like,
here. I kind of want to just go for this.
I might have just scared her into liking me. I'm not sure. But God just made it so clear to us, and it could have been a rough road. But God smoothed a lot of that out and was very gracious and merciful. And the kids fell in love with her, and which doesn't always happen. Blended families are tough, and we've experienced some of that too.
Right. Yeah.
But the kids were very little, and in our instance, it's not always like this, but it wasn't little Gracie saying, no, you're not my mommy. It was, we need a mommy. Right. Daddy needs help. And so...
Please brush my hair.
Yeah, that actually was a big part of it.
Well, Raina kind of has some hair, too. She's got
everywhere
great
we
hair.
go. Oh, my goodness. Yeah, somebody last night was telling her, when you were singing at church last weekend, I had a hard time concentrating because your hair's so cool. And I'm like, I never get that. Nobody says that to me.
That's because you have knots in the back.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I don't know what to do. Yeah.
Oh, that's awesome. That is awesome. Well, we're going to take just a quick break, and then the audience will not notice the break, but we're going to take a quick break and let you tune up, and we're going to let you play a little bit. So
Great.
Yes. Thank you.
This is a song called Fight For Me. It's based out of Exodus 14:14, where Moses is with all the Israelites in the desert, and they're surrounded, and they have nowhere to go, and they think they're about to die. And Moses turns to God, and God says, be still, and I will fight for you. Sometimes I feel surrounded, dark spirits in the air, waiting to destroy me. More than I can bear. Prayer of desperation, nowhere left to run. Look into the heavens and feeling so undone. Fight for me. Yeah.
remain still. He paces in the darkness, he whispers in my ears, poisoning your mercy with all my deepest fears. So when I'm weak and broken, unable to stand, I will wait in silence and watch your mighty hand fight for me. Yeah, I will remain still, fight for